Welcome to TEDCO's Entrepreneur Expo in downtown Baltimore, where the region's top business owners, innovators, and investors have gathered to network, grow, and celebrate the vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem right here in Maryland. I'm Chris Frew with BioBuzz Networks, and I'm honored to be here today with Troy Stovall, CEO of TEDCO. Troy, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate all you do for the ecosystem and all you've done for TEDCO, and thank you for being here at Expo today.
My pleasure. As we were talking before, this is one of my favorite events of the year.
Yes, sir.
And the TEDCO Expo is back after a hiatus.
Small hiatus. One of the songs I walked in earlier was LL Cool J, and he says, "Don't call it a comeback." And it was intentional. COVID and some other things had us not do it since 2019, but could be more excited to have it happen here in 2024, and most importantly, here in downtown Baltimore.
How important is the Expo, the Entrepreneur Expo, and an event like this for our ecosystem?
It's extremely important. The thing we've got to be able to do better, and you know how I talk in alliterations, and we got to come together more, and we got to stitch, and stitching leads to scaling. And scaling and stitching, if you do it right, leads to better storytelling, which is, this is why you and you talk to others here today. And you get into a do loop with that, because if you stitch better, you scale better, you storytell better, you get access to more resources to allow you to stitch and scale better. And the whole point of Expo, the whole point of TEDCO is to create a high level of stickiness. How do we make sure that these companies and we do a great job of starting companies, particularly in our research labs or the federal labs, but we don't do a good job of keeping them or even getting them out there and then keeping them here in Maryland. So to answer your question is, it's important that people understand the resource, and so that's what today is about. I want entrepreneurs to walk away saying, I met one person who can help accelerate my journey. I want our ecosystem partners to be able to say, I put my arm around one entrepreneur to help accelerate their journey. And lastly, I want the TEDCO staff to really see, because sometimes we don't always get to see all the fruits of what we do. They get to see it.
The fact that you're talking about the ecosystem and the stitching, those are good alliterations to talk about an ecosystem. Because an ecosystem is a dynamic layer of things.
Exactly correct.
So how do you describe the Maryland ecosystem right now? What's happening in Maryland, and what are the big currents and themes that are happening in Maryland that is really kind of creating this next wave?
So I was on a session, got to be with Bob Ackerman, one of the founders of Data Tribe and a bunch of cyber companies. And Bob calls it our advantages that we have that's, over most others. And that's, we've got a great workforce. We've got all these federal labs, as I mentioned. We've got all these great institutions. We've got proximity to the federal government, and so those are advantages that we have that other people just don't have, and those are great things. But again, they have been stitched together. They have been scaled, and the governor talked about in our session that I got a chance to talk to him about. We've also got to learn, and Ackerman says this too. We can't be all things to all people, and so there has to be some focus. And I think here soon the governor is going to start providing us that, where we're going to decide we're going to really be great at these 1 or 2, maybe 3 things. And I'm excited when that comes, because that doesn't mean that if you're not in those that you can't be. It just means that as a state, we have to follow that. I think one of the things in leadership, Chris, is great leaders know when to follow other great leaders. And what we've had in Maryland for so long is a lot of good stuff and everyone working within their own thing. And so what I'm seeing more and more, and what Mark Thomas did with like the Tech Hub is a great example. We're starting to come together around rallying points and be able to say, we all individually are leaders, but in this case, we're following him or her. And I think that's an important change in our psyche and our culture in the state. And so I'm excited about that part of it, because it's not that we don't have, because I don't believe you can build anything that you don't already have. Well, that's the cool thing about it. We already got it. We already got the things. We got the things. We haven't made the things into an it.
So what does that next chapter look like, though? Like, making those things into a net. And you talk about leadership.
Yeah.
How does that become the next? How does it become the
thing? I think I'll answer your question. It's kind of a roundabout way. So I grew up in Texas, and I grew up in Houston, and I grew up in Houston. You did not go to Austin, Texas. You had no reason to be in Austin, Texas, unless you with the state government or the University of Texas. There was zero reason. And the thing that they now call a lake is a river, and it still is a river. They just put a dam on it. It was an infested thing. There was no reason to be in Austin, Texas. Now, 30, 40 years later, Austin, Texas is the place to be. Actually, it has a real housing issue in terms of affordability. What point? They had an amazing collection of public and private sector and philanthropic sector coming together, stitched, and they scaled it. And a little bit of luck. That's how these things work out. A little bit of luck too. And so that's what and so they played the long game. And so I think we started that process, and we've got the long game that we're going to have to be willing to play. And I think that's going to be the key. So I think what that looks like, to answer the question now more directly, is that Maryland is, and I think we got to stop talking about comparing ourselves or trying to become the next Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley or Austin. No, we want to be the best darn Maryland. And we want people to be talking 30 years, or government says 10 years from now, they're saying, I want to be like them. And what we got to remember in the journey is you can't compare yourself to where they are. You got to compare yourself to where you are compared to where they started. And I think we don't do enough of that. We got to see where they started, not where they are. And that's the comparator. And then we still want to be Maryland. We don't want to look like Silicon Alley. We don't want to look like Austin. We don't want to look like Silicon Alley. We want to be Maryland, the best of Maryland, that's inclusive, that ensures that people who, like we're going to do later today with the concept capital, who don't have access to capital, have access to the opportunity, and that we are able to really have a thriving, growing ecosystem that is focused on technology, particularly I think in the cyber and the life science spaces in particular, that people will say, I got to be a part of that.
Well, I'd like to share a couple things that we talked to some of your portfolio companies.
Yeah, please.
People earlier. One, a lot of people, you talked about leadership. A lot of the entrepreneurs we interviewed today talked about how important their experience with TEDCO was, but also that it wasn't just a TEDCO, that you were connecting them with other people.
Correct.
They talked a lot about the culture that was being created, about supporting one another. We talked about builder fund groups that still to this day, 5 years later, are on text threads and talking to each other and supporting each other. And they also talked about when they're a $1 billion company, they're ready to turn it around and help each other out. So you had a lot of people talking really good about what I would kind of sum up as a culture of community and a culture of innovation. How does that resonate with kind of what your vision has been since you've joined TEDCO?
I appreciate you telling me that, because that is what we've been trying to look. We have 5 core values at TEDCO: accountability, collaboration, integrity, respect, and stewardship. And when we started, now over 4 years ago, I assigned each of those to one of the leadership team members at that time, and they had to write an article. Some of, I think it may have appeared in BioBuzz, and so, but over the years, Tammy and her team, who leads our development and marketing efforts, have had other people across TEDCO write articles about the different core values. My point being, we aren't just using the core values as something on a wall. We're living them. We hold ourselves accountable to them using a core value. We hold ourselves accountable to them. I love it when I see an email or see a conversation when I don't do something right or someone done, they quote as a part of a core value. And so we purposely started that internally, because we knew if we got it right internally, that it would create it outside the organization. So to hear you say what you said, and I really do, and it warms my heart, because that is exactly what we've tried to create. We don't always get it right. We're human, so I don't always get it right. But I fall back to the core values to make sure that if we need to level set, we have those foundational elements. I actually wrote an article about this as well, Chris, about that what values are in general. They're like a lighthouse. They're a lighthouse that will guide you across the rocks. And it may not be the most linear path. It may not be the most straightforward path, but it's going to be the least risky path. It's going to be the path that's going to avoid the rocks and avoid the shipwreck. And that's what values do for you.
Risk is something that every entrepreneur has to assume. It is helpful to have a good, strong community around you, though. What when you think about the culture of the entrepreneurs that you see at TEDCO, what are some things that stand out to you that you can share about like the culture of entrepreneurship here in Maryland?
So one of the things we're trying to create more and more, and this may not sound like an answer to your question, but I think it's an important piece, is that failure is part of the process. And I know you and I've talked about this, and pivoting is part of the process. And I think understanding that pivoting is a part of the journey. I love it when we get, every other Tuesday we have what we call a fund allocation meeting with Jack Miner, our chief investment officer, and his team bring the ones that they want us to decide upon, and to bring it to actually to Tammy and then Elizabeth Mazzari, who we make up the investment committee. And so what I love in the stories is when someone who we funded in the past has pivoted. They figured out that didn't quite work, and sometimes those pivots are 2 or 3 pivots. It's a plural. And I also love stories where you have individuals who, and we got a story like this where a young lady, we almost put her. We said, "This is just not working. It's just not working," and she's now generating what, $4 or $5 million a quarter. And so you gotta love those kind of stories, and so. That's the fun. You can that's the cool thing is when, and to answer your question is like, how do you help people see when it's not there, that there's a different there. You've heard me talk about that. I learned this from my days of being in Silicon Valley, and this is with people who started Google and Apple and all that stuff. They told me, Troy, you always invest, particularly this level, A quality people that have a B quality plan, never the reverse. Never B quality people. And what that means with an A quality plan, what that really means, Chris, is that idea, most of the ideas that we get, and this is not to be disrespectful to anybody's idea, it's not the best idea. It's an okay idea. It's not a great idea. It's not $1 billion idea. But that person is coachable, and they know that they got parts of a good idea. And to move from that okay idea to a better idea to a great idea, you have to be willing to be coached. That doesn't mean and so there's this fine line between confidence and arrogance, and figuring that out is part of what we do and try to do, I should say. We don't always get it right. That's, again, human. But that's what we're looking for, to answer the question. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are willing to take the risk, willing to be coached, wanting to be coached, but having a decent enough of an idea that we feel there's a there.
Well, there is definitely a there at TEDCO for those people that want to get that idea. We heard about it from a lot of, again, your portfolio companies today. We're hearing a tremendous amount. Again, congratulations and thank you for bringing the Expo back after the short break, because there's not a person of the 1,000 people that are here today that isn't getting some value out of it.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being again. Appreciate all you do for the ecosystem and for TEDCO.
Yeah, likewise. Well, you're a good partner to not only us, but to a lot of others. So any fleeting words that you have for an entrepreneur that's thinking about starting a business out there today, whether they're in Maryland or not? Why?
Yeah. Look, I think I'm an old software developer. And when I was in software, one of my mentors told me, he says, Troy, the whole point of version 1 is to get to version 2. The point. Too many times you have an idea, but you don't want to just get it going. Sometimes you got to get version 1 out there. And the whole point of version 1, let's be clear, version 1 of most software is buggy. It don't really work that good. People complain about it, and it's got all kinds of issues. But that's the point, is to get it out, is to test the market, and to get to version 2. And too many people get stuck on version 0. They never get to version 1. So to answer your question, get to version 1. Get it out there, try it, launch it, test it out. That's point 1. I think point 2, when we talk back to A quality people, we see a lot of people who, most entrepreneurial opportunities come from something happened to you, or you were in an office, or you were working and you saw some inefficiency in the market or in what you did. So you started a company, and you go talk to Chris's 10 friends. Chris go talk to 10 of his friends, and those 10 friends say, Chris, that is the best idea I've ever seen. You come and talk to me, and I tell you, yeah, then only 10 people gonna buy that. Now, you got 2 choices. You can come talk to us, and we'll help you find 10 million people who might want to buy that, or you can stick with your 10 friends. You decide. Your choice. You be surprised how many people choose the 10 friends.
Well, I'll tell you, a good place to vet those ideas is here at the Expo.
Absolutely correct.
Another good place because you got a lot of people around here that have done it, been there, and to your point about version 0 to version, I think the Expo is on version 10 right now, so
Okay.
you have definitely figured out, the mold and the right recipe. So,
I thank Ms. Thomas and her team for that. So,
and Tammy's amazing. She's a force of nature.
that's one word I said.
I always tell her I want to be her when I grow up.
That's one set of words.
Well, thank you again, Troy.
Appreciate you, Chris.
For everything you guys do today. Congratulations on another successful Expo. My name is Chris Frew with BioBuzz Networks. We're recording live today in Baltimore at TEDCO's Entrepreneur Expo. Thank you for joining.